Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So today, the city is quieter than usual. It is the long weekend, so all the people have fled the cities as expected, like clockwork, like the predictable beings that they are. And that means I get the town to myself, so I get the quiet, which is nice. So it allows me to think a bit better. You can hear your own thoughts when things are quiet. That's why if you ever stand on top of a mountain, there's going to be a silence that you've never heard before. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't stood on top of a mountain, and I'm not talking about taking the gondola or trolley, whatever the hell that thing is, up there. You actually have to hike up the mountain, and if it's not windy, it's quiet, you're going to experience a clarity like you've never experienced before. Anyways, the point of this video is to talk about why everybody deep down longs for the apocalypse, or the end of the world as we know it, even if they don't admit to it. There's that meme about the zombie apocalypse. You know, you go up and you'll talk about, oh, you know, the zombie apocalypse is coming, and somebody will say, oh yeah, well, you know, it's gonna happen, right? That's the whole meme. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna tell you why people are more unhappy now than they perhaps have been throughout all of history. The reason is that people are satisfied, but they're unhappy. This is why you see depression rates higher than normal, or higher than they've ever been. It's not just because of people being overdiagnosed. It actually is a thing. People are depressed, and the reason why they're depressed is because they're satisfied, but they're unhappy. How can you be satisfied and unhappy at the same time? Well, if you look up the definition of satisfaction, it stems from satiation. So it's just being full, you know, having your needs met. But having your needs met isn't really happiness. It really isn't fulfilling, ironically, to be full. It is part of it. It allows you to explore other things. But as human beings, if we're not grinding, if we're not doing something laborious, then we tend to get depressed, or we're unhappy. So you see a lot of unhappy people nowadays, and if you find yourself stuck in a rut, if you find that you've hit a plateau, or you're losing motivation, or you slowed down, the cure for that is deprivation. The cure for that is putting yourself in a situation where you're not satisfied, because dissatisfaction really is happiness. If you look at any leisurely activity, like let's say going for a walk. Going for a walk, it takes energy. You know, I mean, you have to get up, you have to go do it, you have to, you know, go outside, maybe you got to put some sunscreen on. You know, well, I don't, but some people do. I probably will soon. It seems like I'm starting to crack up the hotter it gets. You know, I mean, it's not an easy thing necessarily. Leisurely things are not actually that leisurely. We tell ourselves that they are, but really they're not. I mean, think about going camping. You're going to a downgraded standard of living for the weekend or whatever. You know, you're going away from a climate-controlled environment where you have a refrigeration, you have heating. I mean, why would you leave that situation so you can go and sleep in a tent? Well, nobody uses tent nowadays. Apparently everybody has 30-foot RVs. So whatever, you're still downgrading, right? So you can have a view when you wake up in the morning, I guess, of trees or a lake or whatever. But why would you put yourself in that state of discomfort? I mean, if satisfaction was all there was to life, we would just sit like lumps on a log staring into the ceiling all day. But we don't. We willfully make our lives more complicated than they perhaps need to be. Why do we do this? Well, there's a reason why we do this. It's because for millions of years, we were always in a state of feast or famine. We were always waiting for the shit to hit the fan. And shit hit the fan for primordial, you know, caveman, whatever you want to call him, was the saber-toothed tiger jumping you in the wilderness while you're trying to go fishing or something like that. We had no means to defend ourselves against those things until we started to cluster into larger groups. So the shit hits the fan was a constant thing. So in the back of everybody's mind, people think, oh, we got cell phones, and no, people are as primitive as they ever were, psychologically speaking, and the decisions that they make and the people who they mate with and all of that stuff. People are primitive. Don't be fooled by the veneer that you see with people and the fancy clothing and the makeup and the technology and the things that we decorate ourselves with. We're just animals. And in a real shit hits the fan situation, that's going to become very apparent. There's something within our DNA that says, whether you are consciously going to admit it or not, it's what they call archetypal, meaning that it's something which permeates the collective unconscious of everybody. The collective unconscious is this thing that we all share. Within the collective unconscious, you share the same collective unconscious as a tribesman in Africa. It's the same archetypes. We have the archetype of the monster, which is like the lion who can kill you. That's what monsters are. Big cats, like saber-toothed tigers, lions, cheetahs. These are the things that hunted us for millennium as Homo sapiens. So the monster are the big cats with big, fangs and all that. That's a form of archetype. There's also the hero and the villain and all that. But we all, in our DNA, we have this anxiety about the future. And whenever things are going really well, we know that we're kind of at the peak, because whenever things were going well in the past, it was summer or it was harvest time. But you knew that, winter was right around the corner. So, as good as times were, you knew that things were going to get bad soon. So it's in your nature to constantly be hustling, be grinding, to ensure that when that time comes, you're going to be prepared for it. So there's a prepper in everybody, believe it or not. And as biological beings, we need some kind of challenge. Sometimes that challenge is as minute as simply going for a walk. But that is a challenge. For some people, it's a big challenge. For other people, it's just they think it's a leisurely activity, but it isn't. Going down to the dock to watch the sunset. That takes energy. Why not just sit on the couch and stare at the ceiling? I mean, you're alive, right? Well, the reason is because it's biologically ingrained in our DNA that if we don't use our physical bodies, then they're going to diminish. So there's this idea that you have to use it or else we're going to lose it. So I sometimes find myself, I have nothing to do that day. I've finally caught up on things, but I'll just throw another wrench into my plans and I'll complicate things more. And I'm going to say, well, today I'm going to make a new sidewalk, along the dog run, or, I'm going to dig a new trench over here, paint this or pressure wash this or something, I'll do something that I didn't necessarily think I was going to do that morning just to complicate my life. But there's an anxiety about it that you have to be moving forward. And this is why as we enter the age of automation, you're going to have a lot of people who, are kind of rather aimless. Like they want to do something, but they don't know what to do. Now, if you can imagine the most homeless of people in North America today, and I'd venture to say that in most cities, you're never really truly homeless, at least not partially by choice, because there's always shelters, there's welfare, there's social security, there's food stamps, there's free meals offered every day at the local churches and etc. Even the poorest person amongst us is still far better off than most of the Homo sapiens who have ever walked this planet. Think about this. There's 100 billion people who have existed throughout history. Now, a lot of those have existed in the last 10,000 years, but billions of people, like dozens of billions of people, existed before civilization. And all of those people, their night was spent wondering if they were going to be snatched up in the middle of the night by a frickin' saber-toothed tiger. That was life. You know, you didn't know if you're going to be poisoned by, you know, a thing that you ate, or whether you're going to die by the hand of another monkey, or whatever the case might have been. So the people who are the poorest in our society today still are more satisfied than the, you know, more primitive man. But by and large, they're unhappy. I'm not talking about the bums. Actually, a lot of the homeless people you'll meet are probably tend to be more happier than the people who are running the 9-to-5 rat race. The reason for that is that we're satisfied, but on some fundamental level, we are greatly unfulfilled. There's always going to be this anxiety with any biological entity that we need to prepare for the winter. Well, the winter never comes in Western civilization. It's just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. That's why you got people jumping out of airplanes with wingsuits and, you know, riding their BMX bikes off of canyons and things like that. It's not just the adrenaline rush. It's the need to constantly be challenging ourselves. That's never going to go away. But the thing is, what's going to go away is human beings as we know them. And that truly is the end of the world as we know it. Once we start messing with DNA and we start messing with cybernetics, and once we start cloning people and, you know, splicing human DNA with other forms of DNA, and that's when you're really going to see the true end of the world as we know it, because that's when the species is going to end as we knew it for millions of years. So there is some practical aspect that I want to reiterate to this long-winded monologue, and it's that if you seem to have lost it, if you've, you know, you just don't have it like you used to, you just don't feel as motivated to get out and do stuff, you lost your mojo, whatever the case might be, the cure for that is always deprivation. The cure for that is always dissatisfaction. And when I say dissatisfied, I mean it in a good way. We've tricked ourselves into thinking that to be satisfied means to be happy or to be fulfilled. But it's the exact opposite of that, which is why so many people put themselves in situations where they are slightly dissatisfied. Sometimes it's in a controlled manner, you know. I mean, it's if you're going out into an RV for the long weekend to some roadside attraction campground, it's not exactly jumping out of an airplane with a wingsuit, but it approaches that. You know, it's moving in that direction from where we come from in the suburbs. So it's a bit more challenging. So let's say you're a little overweight. Well, one of the best things you can do is refrain from eating something. And you're going to notice the sense of, the pure sense of joy that you feel when you can truly refrain from something, and that the realizations that spin off from that. And, you know, sometimes like you just got to go into the abyss, into the unknown. And that's when things really start to happen. If you find that you've plateaued, that's when you have to, you know, go back to the drawing board. You need some new stimuli to hopefully, you know, trigger something new to emerge. Now, I probably should have prefaced this whole video by saying the apocalypse is going to suck, you know, because I know there's going to be somebody who watches the first 30 seconds of this video and is like, oh yeah, you want the apocalypse, you don't know what to expect and blah, blah, blah. Well, clearly you haven't watched 300 of my videos where I talk about how crappy it's going to be if that were ever to come to pass. But that should go without saying for any of you who's hung in thus far, because you've probably been a subscriber for some time, or somebody who's watched my other videos, that no, that would be the farthest thing from fun. That's not the dissatisfaction I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a prolonged, hellish dissatisfaction that would be the collapse of all civilization. I'm talking about dissatisfaction in controlled amounts. And the reason why you have so many unhappy people nowadays who can't seem to get no satisfaction, as we've been told by Mick Jagger, well, he was wrong, obviously. It's not that he can't get no satisfaction, it's that he can't get no happiness because he's too satisfied. So if you want to revitalize your life, you need to put yourself at a disadvantage somehow and just watch the miracle that ensues from that point forward. Watch what happens when you throw yourself into the wilderness. That's where all great ideas come from. I mean, when you really think about it, nothing really monumental comes to you when everything is going really well, like when everything is perfect, because there's no need. There's no need for you to think differently in any way, shape, or form, because everything's just great. In fact, the first thought that's going to come to you is probably going to be, man, this is freaking boring. That's going to be the inspiration right there, is the realization that, hey, I'm satisfied, but I'm unhappy. Because that's what happens. It's all about dopamine. You know, and dopamine only lasts so long, and everybody's chasing it, whether you're a thousandaire or 100aire, a millionaire or a billionaire. We're all chasing dopamine, and some people get their little dopamine squirt with buying a, $1 million car, and other people get it by cooking a squirrel over an open fire. It's all the dopamine Olympics, really. That's what it is. Who can get the most dopamine? But dopamine is not happiness either. Dopamine, and really you could argue, like, what is happiness? I mean, that would be a good Socratic debate unto itself. What the heck is happiness, really, except a temporary, chemically induced state of mind, which is always fleeting. You're never fully in that moment. You're always kind of watching yourself in that moment. And happiness kind of happens when you're not paying attention. And if anything, it's just a memory. So it's just something to be nostalgic about well into the future. I had a thought the other day that life is just nostalgia. Like when you look back on your life, who you are, the powerful moments that you live for, that you're passionate about, are just nostalgia. It's just a moment that's associated with an emotion. Anyways, getting carried away. But this is why people long for shit hits the fan, because life nowadays is so mundane and mediocre. And as we enter this transition to the point where we become cyborgs and our humanness evades us, you're going to see it more and more. People not knowing what to do with themselves, people going crazy, people popping antidepressants, antipsychotics, whatever it takes to try to be able to live in this world where they're fully satisfied but unhappy. The thing is, the more procedural and regulated our everyday life becomes, the more unfulfilled we also become, because it's the randomness of nature which essentially makes biological life worth living. That's the essence. That's why it's going to be very hard for them to bring in artificial intelligence in a controlled way, because there has to be some element of randomness to it. If you ever watch a bird, like just watch a bird or any animal, its movements are very erratic. They're unpredictable to a degree. I mean, you know what they're eventually going to do, but the way they move their heads, or it's random through and through. Whereas human beings, we've become very predictable from start to finish. Our days have become very routine and predictable from start to finish. And as such, we've lost not just our humanity, because that's just a word that we made up. When we say humanity, we just mean we lost our organic nature, all that means is that we're becoming more robotic and more automatic in our behaviors. And that in itself creates a lot of confusion for people, because they don't realize they're becoming robots. We don't realize that this is not the way things are supposed to be. For billions of years, let's even go back billions to the first, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, single-celled organism, whatever it might be. It was always about chaos. It was always about, not knowing what was coming next. But now we live in a world where, you're abiding by 10,000 rules a day, whether you know it or not. Whether you acknowledge it or not, when just driving to work, you've obeyed like 500 traffic rules without knowing it. You stayed in the line the whole time, and you stopped and you looked and you did this and you did that, and you brushed your teeth when you woke up in the morning, and you locked your door and blah blah blah. You followed all these predictable patterns that you weren't even cognitive of necessarily, because it's become so deeply ingrained, and there is no randomness within your life. So a lot of people long for that randomness, and many people, whether they want to admit it or not, there's a certain allure to the idea of everything just going to shit, because it really would be the ultimate test of all of our manhoods and womanhoods to have that reset, and to have things be chaotic and anarchic again. It's like there's this unconscious longing for anarchy, because for the better part of our existence, we lived in anarchy. We didn't live in a structured, organized civilization. It was complete and utter random chaos, night after night. There were some predictable patterns, but like I said, it was, you had your rhythms. I can't remember what they're called. Ultraradian, there's circadian, ultraradian, infraradian rhythms of nature. Like there's your heartbeat, there's the sun going up and down, and then there's like the moon cycles and things like that, which are longer than a day. There's these rhythms, but what happens in between is very erratic and, moves all over the place. So when you look at a bird, the way it moves its head, like, ultimately it's going to go and fly away and catch that worm. But, how it goes about doing it is it's very artistic in a sense, because it doesn't follow any superimposed rules, cultural rules. And so as our culture has imposed so many rules on us, we become very satisfied because all our needs are met. But once again, we're very unhappy. So now I'm just repeating myself. So let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and happy long weekend if you even celebrate this sort of thing. I think it's only a Canadian thing. Personally, I think it's kind of a stupid idea, but hey, I guess for some people it's meaningful. So cheers, enjoy it. Thanks for watching Canadian Prepper.
The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com or BugoutRoll.ca. Premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.